So I'm Martin, and I'm going to talk. I'm a JS developer, by the way, as well. I'm going to talk about Brew. It's a coffee app that I made because I brew a lot of coffee myself, and I couldn't really find anything that I liked. So, I decided to create an app myself. And I will go through, I will show you the app. I will share some insights, what I went through, some technological, some non-technological. It won't be a lot of code though. But before I show you the app, have you ever thought about JavaScript's history? I think it's quite interesting and fascinating how, in 95 when it was born, it was considered as a complete joke by most programmers, like unworthy to be called a programming language. And, a lot of people hated it as well. Some still do. But, fast forward to today, JavaScript is one of the most used languages. And I would argue that it's not only most used languages in the world, but also very, very powerful. Why? Because you can do so many things with it. Not only can you create a web app, but you can also create a desktop app, like, for example, Slack and VS Code are both created with Electron.js, which is a JavaScript framework. You can also create backend applications, like, with Node.js. And you can create a React native app that is a mobile app, as I did. So I think that's why I really like JavaScript. And I think we all should be proud of it, to be honest, and make use of that skill. Don't waste it. So I'll show you the app. And let's see if so this is the app, basically. Let me do this. I couldn't get this phone full screen, so you'll have to bear with my desktop. This is basically the start of it. I want to show you the splash screen as well. See if that works. No? Okay, it didn't work. So let's just do this. Oh, okay. This is I'm just so happy with it because it was quite a burden to, make it animate. I just wanted to show that. So let's log in. I'll log in with Google. And the reason I'm logging in is because you can create recipes that I will eventually try to build a community out of. So I saved the recipes and I want to know who the author was, as well as that I'm also saving basically your quantity amount of each coffee brew that you've made. So this is basically the main screen, and you see these are your last brewed coffees. So here's going to be a limited list of amounts of coffees. And then you can go to recipe screen where the full list will be displayed. And then you can also create a recipe here. You type in the name and the bean type and take a picture, select the brewing method. So that's basically that part. And now let's go through like how you brew the coffee. So this is basically how the recipe looks like. You have some specifications of the coffee. I don't know how many people here brew your own coffee. You do. Some people, you recognize this, right? So you have water temperature, total time, and water to bean ratio and so forth. And you have some evaluation here as well. So every time you brew a coffee, you will be able to, for future notice, improve upon it. So if you didn't find the taste to be very good, you'll be able to adjust it a little bit next time you brew the coffee. So, and then you just pick the amount of coffee you want to make, and the amount of beans will be displayed here as well. So yeah, let's just pick, 325 milliliters for fun. And so this is the brewing process. So you are supposed now to pour 65 grams of water into your beans in your filter. And when you've done that, you hit next, you get a timer, and you have to stir a little bit as well. You let the timer finish, and then you keep going like that. So you pour up to 130 grams of water. So you go through the entire process here, and eventually you get an evaluation screen that I was talking about earlier. This one you only get if you are the creator. So if you're not, you won't get it. You will just pass through to this one. Nice greeting. Yeah, enjoy your day, basically. So this is, this is basically the app. So what I wanna talk about three things that are a little bit non-technical. So how did I start doing this app? Did I just start to code? No. I grabbed pen and paper actually, and I drew up the layouts, how the buttons should look like, how the screens should be connected together, and so forth. When I had that on paper, I turned to something called Sketch. Maybe some people here know what that is. It's basically an image app like Adobe Illustrator, but a bit simpler, which allows me to create these screens here that are, in UX terms, this is called high fidelity prototypes. And you see the lines between. The lines show, so what I can do here, I can create those, and then I can actually connect parts of the screens with another image. So if I press here, I go to this screen and so forth. And what I can do after that is to upload it to something called Envision, which lets me share a static app, basically. So an interactive PowerPoint presentation with people. And that's what I did. So I shared it with friends and with myself. And I was trying it out for a couple of weeks. And eventually, when I felt that, this flow is good, I'm happy with it, I turned to something called Trello, which is like a mini Jira. So this is basically my board. And so I took this sketch you saw previously, this one, and I divided all of the things I could, like, the simple stuff like the button and, into components. I sliced it basically and created tasks out of it. And then I created tasks out of screens, and then I created tasks out of how the screens are connected together. So now I had a board, a Trello board full of tasks, and now I was ready to go. Not to code, obviously, I had to do some research as well. What kind of packages I should use and so forth. So, which leads me to the next 3 points I want to talk about, the more technical points. And the first one I want to mention is the navigator. So the navigator is basically the central piece in your React Native app that allows you to transition between screens and basically transition between screens. And what I want to say is that if you're planning to create a React Native app, which I think you should absolutely do, you should, or at least I would like to hear that before I start the app, to research, because it is a complicated thing apparently to create a navigator component. And so because of that, React Native actually outsourced it to a third-party library, or to a couple, actually. And the one I used is pretty nice when it works. It's really nice when it works. But when it doesn't work, when I want to do some things, it gets really frustrating. So I usually end up, if I want to do something non-trivial, like for example, I want to do a special transition between screens, I end up in Git issues. And then I end up with people, telling me to downgrade, to upgrade, to change some stuff in the native code. And it can be a little bit messy. So do your research before you choose your navigator. And the reason I'm not just giving you a suggestion right now is because the field is changing rapidly. So what is relevant today might not be relevant in 2 weeks from now. So that is the first point. The second point is about animations. I don't know about you, but I love animations. I love when the app is, alive, when I can feel that something is happening. So for me, animations were a big deal, right? So animations are going to ruin your code. Like that's how I look at it, because before I introduced animations to my components, the code was really nice, clean, and static, and looked good. And then I had to plug in animations, which, introduced some complexity. And because of that, I would like to say that take a deep look into the API documentation, because there are some things that I realized later in the project that would save me a lot of time, but I didn't notice them until very late. So one thing I can show you, for example, is if you go into the settings screen here, you see let me see if I can scroll. So down here, if I hit the plus button, it will animate a new step for me, and if I remove, it will animate it away, basically. So I did it manually in the beginning. Stupid me, but I did it manually, and that was really burdensome. And then I found out that there's a function you can call called layout animations, which you plug into your use effect hook or component mount, which basically does that for you. So it compares the screens and it says, okay, if this element is gone, instead of just statically put it in, it will animate it for me, which is quite nice. So do your research on the API documentation. And and one more thing I want to show you about animations. There's one third-party library, and that is also a thing you can take advantage of. That is called Lottie, that I like very much. And Lottie basically allows you to, it's a plugin you introduce to your project, and then you can go to this website here, and you can find animations. Say you want to have a loading, whatever. Let's see if this works. It works. Okay, so you have a lot of animations here. All of these animations you can just then grab and plug it into your app, which is very nice and works very smoothly. So I will highly recommend this one. And the third and last part I would like to mention is about dependencies. So React Native is a little bit of a hustle. You will get a lot of red screens now and then, but it's more of a heads up. Like, don't be discouraged. Just push forward and you will eventually find a solution. And the reason is simple. There are so many parties involved. So you have Apple on one hand that is, introducing some very interesting demands all the time. So for example, now I have apparently some deprecated methods that I really can't find in my code base. I don't use them, but they are somewhere. And because of that, they won't let me submit the app in the near future. And then you have the React Native team, and then you have all the third-party libraries. So they are like, trying to somehow connect together. And sometimes, you will have to be patient. I'm just saying, okay? But it will work eventually, like my app does. So don't get discouraged. So what did I learn eventually? Why did I do it, and why should you do it? I think it has been a tremendous experience because, I've done this app during my spare time. I've always been full-time employed during the whole period. So I've done it during evenings, 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes, and during weekends. And it felt like, the amount of knowledge I've gained is like twice basically what I would have if I just worked for 8 hours like you normally do. And one of the things I learned a lot, obviously, about is JavaScript, TypeScript, how you code and how you structure projects and how you code for your future self. So, 5, 6 months from now, you won't be able to recognize all the, if you're really coding every day, you won't recognize your own code even if it's your own code base. So that was a pretty interesting lesson to see how stupid I was and, how much I should have written better code. So that's one thing. The other thing is the project management. and the product management stuff is actually pretty important. So how do you take an idea and productify it and then execute on it and stay consistent so you actually, follow through? A lot of my friends, they're like, yeah, I'm going to start a project, but then they just, it just never really finishes. So you will learn a lot of that, and discipline and motivation and, just patience as well. So that is the second thing. And the third thing is, of course, the animations, the UX design. I learned a lot about animations, not only code-wise, not only that it destroys my code, but also how you should create animations from a UX perspective. How should you, how should you accelerate them in the right time frame? How should you bump them? What does an animation actually convey? So I learned a lot about that, and eventually, or lastly, I learned a lot about the design, like UX flow. How do you design an app? So for example, this is my favorite example by far, and I'm still getting a lot of comments for it because I haven't really changed it. So you see this little icon up here. Can you see it? It's an arrow. My intention with that arrow was to indicate to the user that you can actually slide it down. I didn't intend to say that you should press on the arrow. And a lot of people actually do it. And then I have to tell them, no, because it's not even a button. So you can't really press on the arrow. So, you end up, you notice a lot of these small things, and how they actually affect your product and how people actually perceive it. So, with that said, I think if you want to create something, go for it. And I hope I inspired you to do it today. And if you don't want to create a mobile app, you can always create a desktop app or whatever app, as I said at the beginning. So, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.